Hey everybody, John here, Hot Rods in the Woods, for another edition of Here We Go with the Fuel System. So, I just put up a short a little while ago about the difference in Teflon tapes. When you're doing fuel lines, especially with ethanol fuel, please use the proper stuff. The yellow is made for gas and propane and butane, any petroleum-based product. The white stuff is not. It is made for plumbing, i.e. water systems only. So get some yellow stuff. It's same price. The big difference is it's yellow and it's a little bit thicker. I don't know what the composition is. I don't care. I just know you're supposed to use the yellow. So that being said, as you can see right here, let me just zoom you in a little bit. I have used the yellow on the new stuff, and they use white on the plug. So I'm going to remove that and put some yellow on it, just because I don't know what the actual reasoning is, but if it says it on the label, I'm a firm believer that they're probably closer to right than what we had around for all our lives, and that's just what we used. So let me explain a couple things. I'll pull you off of this pedestal again, and I'll bring you in for a closer view. So I revamped the steel lines, went all the way to the front. You can see that fine steel line right there, bent and bracketed all the way up along the frame rail. It is going to hook here, woo, netty, to right here, which is a fuel inlet with a rubber hose. I do have the proper fittings to make that all work. The other one, this one here, is the fuel vent. Now, and all the brilliance of it, ow, don't do that. I always hurt myself. They had it come up into the cab. I'm not going to flip a light on, but right there in the corner is a hole. Let's see. There it is. Right over there. That hole brought the fuel vent right up into the cab of the car, and that's where it was venting the fuel tank. If you want to lose some brain cells and get high, that's a great idea. If you want to live, if there's a spark, it's a bad idea. So what I'm going to do is pretty much the same thing, but I'm going to bring the vent up in behind the panels, the interior panels, up high, make a loop, go back down, and come out underneath the car. Now what that will do is keep it from getting fuel in the vent hose and causing it to not vent properly, but by going up high enough where the fuel can't splash up in it, and then going back down and exiting out of the car, the vapors will leave the cab, it'll smell better inside, and you've got a good fuel vent. So I'm not doing a rollover valve in this, because if it rolls over and that thing dumps that fuel all the way up and down again, you got more problems. So I'm going to go ahead and get some stuff together. I'll get right back with you and we'll start on this process. Okay, so here we are back with 3/8 hose, which is good for ethanol. Be sure of that, because it will eat up the old stuff. We have our Teflon tape, which, if you read carefully on it, it says, I don't know how well you can read that. Anyway, it says handling gasoline, petroleum oils, natural gas, pressure not over 100, butane and propane. So there's a reason that this stuff is yellow. I don't know what it is, but there's a reason. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take this fitting off. I know I could use a line wrench, but I don't think I can get it in along the center unit. Another thing you don't want to do here is if you can avoid it, want to use steel fittings on a steel tank, because all you need to do is bump a little spark and you'll be saying hello to your maker. So we've got that apart. Now we've got to take out the old, if we can ever find the seam. This is always fun, trying to get that stuff off. It'll fall off when you don't want it to. We'll get her off as best we can. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, the Lone Ranger was painting his horse silver. Dad joke, sorry. Oh, this is ridiculous. So the wrap was so tight that even where it wasn't in the fitting, you still can't get the stuff out. So we'll try a little knife action. See if I can't cut myself. Sorry I'm off camera here. You really don't want to see this. I could put you on hold or pause. But why would I do that? This is just becoming a serious pain in the ass. And now we're getting somewhere. There we go. All right, so we're about ready to win. Spoke too soon. No surprise there. It happens all the time. There, ta-da. I could have gone to the plumbing bin, got another fitting. But sooner or later, oh, here's another little trick, guys. When you're doing Teflon tape, don't take it out of the roll. Just stick the tape out the edge. And then when you go to do it, I know you've done it yourself, it all of a sudden balls up, falls out, now you got a whole bunch. Whereas if you just do it this way, it only comes out a little at a time. They say 3 wraps. Being as I'm brass to brass, I only do like 2. So they're taut. And there it is. It didn't unroll in my hand. It didn't get kinked up, which I know you've done too, which is just a real pain because you don't want to waste it. You want to straighten it back out. No, you end up with a mess. So, if I can get my left hand to work, we'll get that thrown in there. We'll go ahead and snug her up. When you're working with brass fittings, remember that snug is good. You don't want to go too tight. If you see a little moisture there, you can snug it up a little more, but why would you do that out of the gate and make more of a mess? You can crack it, it becomes a nightmare. So okay, here we go. We're going to put our hose up here. We aren't going to cut it to length until we're ready. I'm going to get a brand new clamp, which once again, this is heartbreaking. These clamps, can you see that? Good old clamp. I always get them in stainless, but you can't even buy them made in America anymore. And the way I know that to be true is, oh, I probably ought to tighten that up. How did I miss that? Yeah, let me snug this fitting up because I apparently started it and forgot to tighten. But almost all of these fittings now are metric. So that hose clamp, instead of being a good old 1/4 inch nut driver, we're good to go, is no longer 1/4 inch. I buy them by the bag. I didn't buy them off of Temu or whatever it is. I bought them locally at a parts store. And they are now 6mm, which means you have to go buy another set of nut drivers in order to get your junk to work so you can tighten it up. Okay, so there we have that. I'm putting the clamp straight up and down. It is virtually impossible on this particular car to work on this part of the fuel system without pulling the tank back anyway. So I want to make it fairly easy. because you just can't do it from under the vehicle, because remember I added that cross member. So it got that snugged up. I'm going to go get 5/16 line. I'll do the same thing, another roll, set it up, get it ready to go through, and then we'll slide the tank into position. We'll cut the 3/8 holes to fit the fitting, and we'll be good. Now, I know most of you know this. If you're watching these videos, you've done this stuff before. If you haven't done this stuff before, I'll throw in just another little ditty. When you're tightening up a hose clamp like this, especially on small fuel lines, it doesn't have to be ridiculously tight. All you're looking for is just for the rubber to just poke up a little bit into the clamp itself, which means that it's done all the crimping it's going to do. So we just snug them in there good. If you tighten them too tight, especially these clamps from, we don't quite know where they come from, but I'm pretty sure country starts with a C, they'll just strip. So that's what we want to do there. So, okay, so now we're done with the outside part. And we still have our fuel sender to do, which I will reach up in here to this gabagoo, which we love so much. Okay, so a few things when you're doing wiring on old cars like this. It's the difference between your old analog TV and the now digital stuff. So in order to keep yourself from having connector problems later, instead of using garbage like this, here's one that I can get you right up in front of the camera. Instead of using something like that, get yourself some connectors and solder everything together. Now, there are some differences on the newer equipment that is computered, and got to be real careful with resistance levels. You need to do your homework and do it right, because there's different splicing techniques, there's different connectors to use. And the reason for that is because the computer senses such minute amounts of difference in resistance that's how it gets a lot of its signals to change things up and down. So do that before you're checking, especially if you're working with EFI, with fuel injection and all. You'll see, as I've said in the past, a lot of hot rods that are at the drag strip and whatever, and they have failures. And most of those failures are caused by wiring and sensors. And very seldom do you hear them say, oh, I had to change the processor, the computer itself. But you hear all the time that this sensor or that sensor or this wire or that wire went bad. And a lot of it can be right at the connectors. So always check that. Another thing, I don't know if you can see this. Can you see those little marks right there? That's from what they call a Scotch lock. Okay, so I had to run off on you for a minute because I couldn't find any of these things. So they have a few different kinds. I'll start off with this one. This is kind of like an add-a-wire Scotch lock. But here's the trick. Can you see how small that is? It's about good for 2 strands of copper wire to go through it. So this literally cuts through the insulation and cuts into the wire. And that's how it holds it together. So it doesn't take any time for a little moisture to get in these holes. Although this one, they do put a little bit of silicone grease in there. But get in those holes and cause that to corrode, the wire disconnects and poof. This is another fine unit. They call this an add-a-wire. And basically what it is the same thing. You can see that tiny little slot. When you close this up, you can put a spade connector in the side of it. And they all just cut the wires. You will find more of these underneath pickup trucks and cars with trailer hitches where they've added a trailer hitch connector, wiring connector for the trailer, and the lights don't work. Sometimes even the lights on the back of the vehicle won't work because it is literally cut the wire. So do it right. Strip the wire. There's a few different ways to do it. I'll show you one here in just a second, just because it works really well. Okay, so here's what we're going to do. I'll start off with just a piece of wire. Now let's say you want to splice in right here. If you don't have a pair of these, get a pair. They're reasonably inexpensive. These are Blue Points, which is by Snap-on. I've had them for 100 years. But you put your wire in there, you spread her apart a little. See how that spreads? Just real nice bunch. Then you do it again. Now you have a piece that's loose. So you can take your cutter, take your knife, whatever you're going to do. I'll use my knife just so you can watch me cut my hand. And we're just going to clip that little piece out. And there you have a hole, right? Now I use an ice pick. You don't necessarily have to do that. But if you get yourself a nice ice pick, stab it through the wire. I'm doing this in front of the camera. I'm behind the camera, so it ain't going to be perfect. But you get the idea. Poke it through the wire, just like that, right? Pretty simple stuff. Now you have a hole. Twist your wire up. Put the shield back on your ice pick so you don't stab yourself. Take your wire. I can't thread a needle without my glasses. You'll get the idea here. Maybe you won't. Let me do it a little different here. Problem is I don't have a pair of cutting pliers with me, which I probably should have grabbed. All right, so I'm just using a loop here. You get the idea. Stick it through the hole, twist it up, solder that, and then if you were smart, unlike me, you slid a piece of shrink wrap over top of this. Use Marine. It's got goop in it that melts and waterproofs the connection. The stuff that they sell for automotive does not. And there you have it. A good tight connection. You can pull on it. Won't come apart. It is soldered and sealed, so it's not going to corrode there. And it's a real good way to do it. Once again, if you're working with stuff that has a real tight resistance like computer controls, you're going to want to do it the way they recommend. But this is a great all-around way to do it. So that being said, let's continue on here. So now I've got my two fuel lines. Now I'm working toward my fuel pump, or my sending unit. This wiring harness is actually pretty tricky. So anyway, anywhere you see those splices that are broken like that, you got to cut them out. They have got to go away, because if you don't catch every one of them, later what's going to happen is you're going to have trouble. Now this wire here is for the right rear, right turn signal. So I've just cut it. It's too short to get over to the right side. We'll deal with that. This other one that we found is brown. I am sure that this is parking lights left and right. So we're going to have to do something with that. So there we have it. Now these are pretty much color coded the way they would be normally from the factory. So we have a pink wire, which I will bet you when I look at it, it's going to say fuel sender, because that would be normal. Fuel gauge. So we know that the pinky wire is going to go there. So we'll deal with that. Now, well, here's another one. Here's the yellow wire way back here. The yellow wire is the left rear turn. So now we have both turn signal wires, the green and the yellow, which were boogered up. Would have been great to send this down the road to a paying customer and it lasts for a week. And now you've got to troubleshoot the whole mess to try and figure out why it has failed. Now we've got another wire here that's orange wire. I don't know if you can see that. Let's get you up in there. There's an orange wire here that they have put a Scotch lock and flipped it back on itself. I don't know that I can see what it is. This is for a third brake light, and that would be like on your newer car's center high mount stoplight up in here or something. So we aren't using one of those. It's okay. They had wired both of the turn signal lights together, thinking that that would work. Obviously, it did not. So all the rest of this wire. So thus far we have parking lights, which is brown. I'm pretty sure. Yep. Rear tail lights, parking lights, fuel gauge, right turn signal, left turn signal. Yeah, let me get this unwound here. Now, what is all the rest of this wiring? Let's see. This is for an electric fuel pump, which we're no longer using. I've removed it. These are left backup, dome light, and trunk light. So I suppose I could make it trick. And I can use these two, which is dome and trunk. Oh, that's fuel pump. We're getting rid of the fuel pump. So let's tie a knot in it. It's gone. Gone. This is trunk light. Backup lights we do not have in this old car, although it wouldn't be a bad idea to add them. Trunk light, dome light. So we're getting rid of the yellow wire. Trunk and dome. Can run those up top. We can do something with those. Back you up a ways. So we'll use these for the trunk light and the dome light. I can set that up so that when I open the back door, there will be a light that comes on back here. Or I can put it on a switch, which might not be a bad idea, so you could actually leave this door open if you so desire. So what we have here is we have four wires. Fuel, left, right, and park. That's the four we've got to use. Now then we've also got to come up with a ground that goes from our fuel sender from our fuel sender to the body, which I'll do. Once again, here's the garbage they had, which would work for a season till it got wet a couple times, or you know how corrosion works, it'll find you. So we're going to go ahead and use a true ground strap for that. So we'll chuck this piece too. So we'll start throwing away garbage that we aren't going to use. We'll make up a ground, and we'll go from there. I've got to do that before I put the fuel tank back into its permanent position, which I plan on doing today. And we might even make her spit fire in a little while, so stand by for all of that. So I want to bring this to your attention too. If you get connectors like this, which you can buy everywhere, but you can't find soldered connectors anywhere, it's quite easy to just take this, give it a twist, and there you have it. And you can solder to that. Now I know some of you are going to ask, man, what'd you do to that thumb? Well, here you are. I got it caught in a go-kart drive belt back in the, late 60s. I was hanging onto the roll bar as a buddy of mine named Brett was driving the go-kart. A mini bike went flying by us as we're bopping along in the sand pit, and he decided he wanted to race him. So he slowed down for me to jump off the back, Well, the problem was I was a dumb kid and I forgot to let go of the roll bar with my right hand. As he accelerated more rapidly than my feet could keep up with, my natural reaction was to reach out with my left hand to catch myself to keep my big schnoz from hitting the dirt first. Well, there was an obstacle in the way. It was the drive belt assembly on a go-kart. So you guessed it, my thumb got caught in the pulleys. I don't know exactly what happened, but somehow the belt tore my thumb up. So the choices at the time were, we can try and keep it, sir, or we'll have to remove the thumb. Well, my parents, of course, opted to try and keep it. And amazingly, still today, 56 years later, I'm now 67, the old thumb still operates quite well. It has about 100 stitches in it. It still has nerves in the end. It still works fine. They had to stretch stuff and pull stuff, and I have scars on my legs where they did a skin graft. But happily, I still have all of my digits. So that's what happened there. Okay, so I'm not going to go all the way back through this, because if you look way back when I was wiring my 57 Chrysler, you will see a video on how to do connectors, blah, blah, blah. So take a look back there a ways. Now, I put this towel down because the tank is painted to match the car, right? I put the cardboard down so that if I decide to wipe my face with this towel after it comes out of the laundry, I don't scar myself for life with a hunk of solder that is melted into it and become a knife. Now, these are a neat little piece of equipment right here. Yes, I did get these off of Temu for pennies. But what they do is they've got a little flipper here. You can see. And you can put your wire underneath it quite handily. And it just acts like a little vise. Now, before I found these fine units, which now apparently don't want to play the game, I used to use these. I just put it in between them like that. And they worked just fine for years and years and years. But we got a little fancier now. So we're just going to pop that in there. I'll do it in both. We'll do a solder up, because this I'm going to solder. This is for the ground strap for the sending unit. I'll make up that wire. I'll go ahead and make up my fuel gauge wire. I am going to leave it long so that my wiring can come way over to the driver's side of the car and go across to the fuel sending unit. So we'll do that and pull that through. And once I do that, I'll go ahead and hook the rest of the lines up, and I'll get back with you, and we'll go farther. Okay, so back again for a little bit more of this stuff. So some things can be avoided, some things can't. Can you see up here? Let me get you up there a little higher. And as we're working underneath now. They might be too high now. Oh, you're definitely up there. All right, so this is the brake light switch that has a wire that zoop going down. Zoop. And you see this? It was orange, and now it's green. This is one more thing that you don't ever want to do when you're wiring something, is don't change colors halfway down the line. So I've got to find a piece of orange wire now to put in this place here. I have a piece down here. and it says third break, which really doesn't help. So I'm going to try and find just a plain piece of orange, and then I'll run it back here to the brake light switch, and that'll be a wonderful thing. The big thing, now that I've goofed up my camera, would take you all the way around the block because tension only works one way. The other one, so we have brake switch power, brake switch, or brake lights. So one of these feeds power to the switch, then when you push on the brakes, it closes the connection, sends it back up to the turn signal switch, which then divides it out to the rear taillights for the one side that will be brake if you're using a turn signal. So there's that. I've also got to clean up this bit of corrosion here that there's no reason for other than something went wrong in here and I don't know what, but we'll figure that out. It's just in that one spot. So I'm going to continue on with that, get this wiring switched around. In the meantime, my real effort here, come on. Well, now you can go up if you want to. There you go. So you go up a little bit, then you fall. Is dealing with all of this. Now we've already had the conversation where I am going to ditch part of this garbage. I'm going to get rid of the fuel pump wire, which is this big hunk of yellow. So we'll ditch that. Now when you aren't sure if you're going to use something or not, leave it around for a while. I will actually leave this in the harness with a pigtail stuck out, the end of it capped, but the rest of it can just go away. Now here we have the fuel gauge and the parking light wire, which we know we're going to use back here. So just for grins, we'll loop them over the rear differential over the jack shaft for a minute. And what else do we have back here? We had right turn, right rear turn, and we have left turn. Trunk light. Okay, what am I doing here? Left back up. Third brake. Left turn. That's where the problem lies because I had to cut out this yellow wire because they had a bunch of splicing in there that was screwed up. Now, why would you have a yellow wire that's fuel pump and a yellow wire that's the turn signal? I don't know. So we'll bundle those together and they go up. Now, the question is, did I, with this piece of yellow wire, which was removed, what does this say? This says power window. We don't need it. So I need a piece of yellow and I need a piece of orange. Once again, they need to be blank. But that way, even from the front, even if it's not marked, you can tell that it's a yellow wire and it's a turn signal wire. So probably if I go to the back of the car and I find a yellow wire, it's probably for the turn signal. So I've got to get all this loomed up. I've got to get it attached in here where it's halfway pretty. I have to remove these wires because, I don't know where we're going. I have to remove these because they failed to put them in the loom forward there. So I'll take these loose, unhook them, run them in the loom after I find another piece of orange wire. Hook those back up, loom all of this, somehow make it nice and neat. Not use garbage like this where you just have a wire tie hanging off the brake line to hold your wires. We'll do something with that and we'll go from there. So that's the next project, guys. Stand by and we'll continue on farther. Okay, well, been gone a few minutes. Thought I just had a couple simple things to do. Now I'm all tied up in wiring. And then I found out that it was just too much of a mess and I needed to remove it all. So I've taken it all the way down to where it comes through the floor, which is a terrible way to do things because it just doesn't work against that sharp tin right there, right here. And there's no transmission tunnel as of yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grommet it. I'm going to bring it out the other side of the tunnel and try and make that all work. So I've got the harness out. I have reconnected the taillight wires and we're just about ready to go. I do still need to pick up a piece of orange. I'm okay with the yellow. So I'm going to get back with you later. I've got to revamp this, and just all I'm going to do is relume it, rehang it. They just had it wired tied to brake lines, and it's just a mess. I'm also going to try and figure out why we have two, count them, two check valves in the brakes. I learned that from mine. When you have disc brakes on the front and the rear, they call for a secondary 1 or 2 PSI check valve. However, I found when I did that, my brake pedal feel wasn't real comfortable. So because I had already made my brake lines up, I removed the guts of the one for the rear, and it seemed to work really well. So I'm happy with it as it stands now. So we will leave it like that, and I'll try it on this thing over here. He did use a standard style proportioning valve, although on my gasser I used an adjustable one. And in doing so, we'll try it before we do anything just to see how it operates. This is an aftermarket brake booster, master cylinder, and brakes all the way around. It's got discs in the front, of course, Corvette discs in the rear. So we'll go to doing some tweaking after we drive it and see how we like it. In the meantime, I'm going to go ahead and work on this wiring. I'm going to make the rest of the bracket for the steering rack, which I will show you in the next video, and we'll be back. So please remember to like and subscribe. When this one's over, my plan is, or was, and has been, that as of the 1st of March, I'm going to start diving into this much harder. So this has got to come out of the lift over the weekend. This has got to go in the lift over the weekend so that I can get it up in the air. And as I said before, I've got a little oil leak to fix. Just a couple little things underneath I want to address. And then I'm going to start rebuilding the tilt front end and make it more push a button. What am I looking for? Word. Automated. So what I've done is I've come up with an idea with a convertible top set of rams, and we'll see if we can make that all work. It's going to be cut so it just slides straight forward, and once it gets forward, then it will stand up so it's out of the way, and we'll see how that all works. Hopefully I don't butcher it up so bad that I've created a bunch of junk, but one way or another, got to address that, raise the radiator up, do a couple other things. So more fun to come. Once again, thanks for watching. We'll see you next time. Bye-bye.